Welcome to another supersized edition of You Comment, We Respond. We're doing 4 videos this time, 5 last time. That's some crazy stuff.
Insane.
Next time we're going to get back to maybe 2, maybe 3, something like that. It'll be back to normal. The first one we're going to do today is Men of Steel with an A. It's
awesome.
A fun pun, isn't it?
Superman.
It was also a really cool hand.
Yeah.
In the Poker Stars something or other.
Championships?
Poker Stars Championship in Panama, where Kenny Smerin opens 10-8 of hearts in, this is late in the tournament.
Yeah.
He's in the hijack. Dennis Timofeyev, I think his name is. 3 bets Jack 7 of hearts out of the small blind. Smerin calls. The flop is 8-9 deuce with 2 clubs. Goes bet call. The turn is a 4 of hearts, I believe. It goes check check, and the river is a jack of clubs, bringing straights and flushes. It goes bet for very thin value from Timofeyev with his now rivered jack. Then Smerin turns his 8 into a bluff and moves all in, which is super cool.
Yeah.
But Timofeyev ultimately does call.
Yep. Some bloke says, Smerin's value range is wider than just 12 combos of clubs, in my opinion. Timofeyev is pretty capped on the river, as he likely jams turn with his clubs and probably doesn't trap with kings and queens, as they are somewhat vulnerable. His strongest hands are aces and ace-jacks, so Smerin can jam for value with jack-9 suited, jack-8 suited, as well as slow-played sets.
Now, I'm not sure if we can agree with this.
Yeah.
There's a couple points here that are not so clear to me. I think Timofeyev is not capped in that way. I think Timofeyev can have clubs and have played them this way because jamming the turn would have been a really big bet. It would have been an over bet. He might have been going for a check shove on the turn with that hand.
You think that's a very reasonable way to do it. You can actually put yourself in an awkward spot where you bet your clubs yourself, get moved in on it, and actually have to fold.
Right.
You could bet enough to commit yourself to the pot, but why not check and go for all that extra free value if this guy's going to bluff sometimes or bet fold a reasonable hand, which, you know, Smerin's going to have to do sometimes.
Right. We definitely would like to do that as a play if we're Timofeyev. I think that's a really good way to play clubs, check shove the turn.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I think he's not capped at those hands that you're saying, and I think it would be really ambitious to try to move in for value with a 2-pair hand or a set.
I mean, that said, Smerin clearly thinks Timofeyev doesn't have clubs very often because he turns his 1-pair hand into a bluff. He thinks Timofeyev has pretty much the kind of hand that he has.
Yeah.
Maybe ace-jack, maybe, you know, or aces, like you said, or something like that. But pretty much a 1-pair hand, and that's why he's moving in. So maybe he agrees with you.
He might, but I don't know. He's saying he has clubs, though. We think Smerin is saying he has clubs. I guess this is the disagreement here.
Right.
But we think Smerin can have clubs. We just think it has to come with a 4 or a 9 in order for him to play it this way.
Exactly. Otherwise, he would bet those on the turn, which makes it really interesting for both players.
Right.
All right, moving on. We have Madman or Genius.
Ooh, exciting hand name. And who is it we're talking about? Fabrice Solier.
Yes.
Is he a madman or a genius?
Well,
I guess we'll see what the people said.
Well, why don't you tell us what happened in the hand first?
I'm going to tell you what happened in the hand.
I don't feel like you are.
I'm going to tell you what Fabrice Solier did to start the hand. That's limp under the gun, which we did not like. No, Fabrice had ace-5 of diamonds, and he limped under the gun.
It was the final table at the WPT.
Right, and there were like 75 other limpers, even though they're only 6-handed. The flop came out, and it was not a good one for Fabrice. I got it right here.
It was jack high.
It was jack 6-3 with 1 diamond, and he's got ace-5 of diamonds. He decides to bet into 3 other people for some reason.
Bam.
That was weird. He gets called in 2 spots by Nam Lee and Ravi Udakumar.
Nice.
Nam Lee had queen-jack, Ravi had 9-6 of spades.
Right.
The turn came an 8 of spades, giving Ravi a flush draw. The turn is where things got really weird, where Ravi checked, Fabrice checked, Nam bet, Ravi called, and Fabrice, with his ace-high nothing hand, decided to raise. He did get Nam to fold top pair, but Ravi, with his pair and flush draw, decided to call. The river came the 10 of spades, completing the flush for Ravi, who then checked. Fabrice gave up right away.
Yeah.
Seemed like he lost a lot in the hand that he didn't have to.
Agreed. Gabriel Rockman says, I like the check by Ravi on the river. He's saying this because we were saying Ravi really should bet the river.
Yeah, we thought a blocker-looking bet would be cool on the river.
If he's not checking his flushes here, can he check call with 2-pair? I think 2-pair hands have to fold here. So I think he has to check his flushes in order to keep his checking range on the river balanced. If he doesn't check his flushes here, then every hand he has is either a hand to bet with on the river or a hand to check fold with on the river, and that's a situation you must avoid. It's kind of a cool point.
That is a cool point.
We weren't really taking into account balance as much as we probably should have, actually.
I don't know if we need to account for balance back in 2004 in the WPT.
This is a fair point.
Yeah, but theoretically, I do like these points. These are cool points. The question is, does Ravi actually have to check fold his 2-pair, or can he find a call sometimes? I think we can't say he's going to 100% fold 2-pair on the river. We have to assume Fabrice has some bluffs in his range.
We do, but if there's still a lot of spots where if Ravi is going to check and never have a flush, essentially, and there's a third spade that comes out. I mean, Fabrice, when he raises the turn, is usually either going to have the flush as a semi-bluff or a better hand than like a weak 2-pair, right?
That's fair, but another thing this comment is assuming is that Fabrice is always betting the river.
Yes.
There are times when we are Ravi and it goes check, check, and we have 2-pair and we just get to win.
I would guess that what really happened is Ravi called the turn raise and thought to himself, and I do this too, for sure, like, if I improve, I'm checking. Like, I'm checking no matter what, and I'll figure it out. But like, the plan is to check to let this sometimes crazy guy keep being crazy, which is not a bad thought.
Not a bad thought at all. But I do like this comment, although I don't 100% agree with it.
Yeah. Next up, we have Hungry Like D. Wolfe, where
Roland de Wolfe.
Roland de Wolfe and Ian Fraser played a interesting hand from the Premier League. Grant, tell him what happened.
Okay. Ian Fraser limped ace-4 of clubs in the small blind. Roland, as Phil Hellmuth likes to say,
apparently
raised with 6 deuce off from the big blind. Fraser called. The flop came out ace-king-5. Roland flopped nothing. Fraser flopped top pair. Check, bet, call. That was perfectly normal.
Sure.
The turn was a 4 of hearts, bringing a third heart, and also bringing 2-pair for Fraser, who decided to bet a quarter of the pot for some reason.
Weird, but okay.
That was weird. 20K into 76K. Roland decided to call, setting up a bluff, obviously.
He does actually, as it turns out, have both straight and flush equity, but it's hard to know.
It's hard to know that. He has 6 high right now. It is a super small bet. The river then comes with what? What did the river bring?
I mean,
some sort of thing.
Good.
I didn't actually write it down on this.
Wow.
7 of clubs,
That's
I think
right.
is what it was.
The 7 of clubs.
Yeah. Then Fraser did something very strange. He bet 20K into 116K with his 2-pair hand. Roland's like, you know what, buddy, screw you. I'm all in for 137K.
He actually snap shoves.
Yeah.
He says all in right away.
And Fraser folds.
Yes, takes a little while and folds. Doc Tar says the terrible blocker bets are less terrible if Fraser is leveling de Wolfe's aggressive play and has a plan to call the river in this situation.
Yeah.
The bets are sized pretty well to leave de Wolfe with a pot-sized bluff shove on the river. Of course, we know that wasn't Fraser's plan. But it would have been a cool creative play if he takes 10 seconds, checks his hand, and calls the snap shove. Wouldn't it have been reminiscent of Max Martinez's small river bet in the Ken Phil Hellmuth Kill This Kid's Dream hand? That is exactly right.
Yeah, I think you even mentioned that.
I may have.
Yeah.
I may have, at least to you. I don't know if I did it on the
it's
video
possible,
or not.
but that would have been cool because Fraser could have been setting up this very aggressive player for that play, and that would have been a really good idea and really exploitatively cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was just playing his hand. He was playing it kind of scared, kind of face up, and he got owned.
I mean, it's a beautiful thing to induce there with the 20K bet on the river, where you think, like, if I check, Roland's just giving up a lot because it just doesn't look like I'm folding. And if I bet too much, he's just going to fold because he doesn't even think I have fold equity. But if I bet super weak, I can induce, and I was going to call a shove anyway on the river if I checked, so it's fine.
Yeah.
That's a way to look at it. If we think Roland has the I was going to call it stones, but sort of like the impetus, the wolf-like nature to just jump all over those kinds of bets, which he clearly does.
I think, however, though, that Roland would have probably made a big bet on the river had it been checked to him anyway. I mean, he has 6 high. He's obviously setting up a plan.
It turns out his hand is so bad he has to bet the river. Also, he called the turn. He's clearly betting the river.
But this is a good point. This would have been a really cool induction. Unfortunately for Fraser, it was just a dinka, 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 I'm going to get owned.
Yeah. A check is a similar level of induction, too, once we only bet 20K on the turn. All right, finally we have, what did you do, Phil Ivey? What did you do?
Did the great Phil Ivey make a mistake?
Maybe.
It's possible. Click right up there to check that video out. This happened in a 100K event.
Yeah.
That magnifies everything quite a bit.
To us, it does.
Yeah, I mean, it would hurt for me to lose.
Maybe Phil, it's the same.
It was Antonio Esfandiari against Phil Ivey, where Esfandiari opened deuces in the cutoff. Ivey called on the button with 8-5 of spades. They were very deep, 75 blinds effective. The flop was king deuce 5 rainbow. Esfandiari bet. Ivey raised with his middle pair no kicker hand, which was very strange. Esfandiari decided to call, which we thought was a really good play with his set. It went check, check on the jack turn. The river was the 9 of clubs, where Esfandiari bet 58K into, that's about a half pot bet, and Ivey eventually called with his very bad hand.
Weird stuff.
Yeah.
Eric Smythe 14 says.
Hey, you said the name right.
Bam, Roland. I must say that I love this value, all in caps, value raised from Phil on the flop, the way ranges were at the time this hand was played. It's aggro cutoff versus station button opening ranges, which simply makes 5x on this board a monster.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Quite.
And Eric Smythe, not trolling, I don't think.
I don't think so.
And like commented many times before. It's difficult to flop a hand as good as or better than 5x on King 5 Deuce Rainbow with the range Antonio used at this time, as it's only about a quarter of his opening range and even beats 5x on the flop. Only about a quarter of his range beats 5x on the flop. He continues on to talk about this, but I think that's enough for us to discuss.
That doesn't mean it's value, though. That doesn't mean Antonio's going to call with all of his worst hands. Antonio's not going to call with queen high here, right?
Well, no, you could raise for value to deny equity, meaning like you have the best hand.
That's raising for protection.
Yeah, you're right.
That's not raising for value.
No, you have to get called to raise for value.
Right.
You're totally right.
So I think when you say value, Eric, I think what you mean is protection.
I was trying, Eric.
We did. I mean, we obviously broke it down in excruciating detail, and we think there are some hands Antonio could call with that are worse than a 5, which are his potential bluffs on the river, his 3-4 suiteds and his ace-3 and ace-4s. But that's it. We don't think he's calling with queen high, so it's not really value. It's protection, which can be kind of cool. We came up with some reasons why the raise could be okay, although it was, as we said, a stretch.
Very much a stretch. We have a reasonable hand. Why are we raising this? If we're raising this, what are we calling with?
Yeah.
I don't understand why we have to raise a hand that is clearly, you're calling it a monster. Okay, it's a monster against maybe Antonio's entire range.
Sure.
But the ranges that Antonio continues on once we raise, it's not so much a monster anymore, right? Suddenly it's kind of crappy, right?
Yeah, it's real crappy.
So why are we putting ourselves in that situation where we can call the flop, call the turn, decide to call the turn or not, by the way, and then decide to call the river or not. It's okay, by the way, to get sucked out on sometimes. Like if Antonio has, ace high on the flop and turns an ace or something, turns an overcard and beats us, that's not the end of the world. We probably lose about the same amount that way, but this way we get to keep some of Antonio's bluffs alive, which we just don't do almost ever, except the gut shots on the flop.
Yeah, what we concluded was it is not a value bet. It's a protection/bluff bet where he's protecting against overcards that are going to fold, and he's trying to bluff out 6s through queens, which might work sometimes.
Yeah.
That seems a lot more reasonable than trying to get value from a worse hand.
Right, I mean, you're calling it value, but Ivey does check the turn. Granted, a big card, I think a jack comes on the turn. So it's a little bit, I understand why Ivey would check that anyway. If a deuce comes on the turn, I guess, is Ivey going to bet or not?
I don't know.
Maybe he bets one more time with the plan of checking back the river as quickly as possible and folding to any further aggression.
I guess.
Yeah.